All right, so reflecting on this trip I just came back from, I have to say, I've done a lot of camping in my life, a lot of backpacking, hiking, overlanding before there was a cool word for it. And this last trip out there to the hot springs was awesome. I think once again I have to thank Wonder Hussy for inviting me. That was cool. And I wanted to talk about like an incident that happened because it was really interesting to me. I pride myself on the ability to get along with anyone. My father, I grew up with this mantra from my dad. He said it to me many, many times as I was a child. He would always say, look, I could talk to a bum on the street. I could talk to the Queen of England. I can make them both feel comfortable. So, he always said, nobody's more important than anybody else. Everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. My dad was an immigrant. He came to this country. He didn't speak any English. And he learned and he assimilated. He was a likable dude. Never underestimate the power of likability. All right? You are not a likable person if you're the sort of person that walks into a situation cold, not knowing anybody else, and then start taking charge of that situation. All right? That's like narcissist behavior. And I bring this up because one evening, while we're out at these hot springs, we're all having a nice time. It's late at night. Everybody is on, to a degree, some substance, one substance or another. And mostly it's alcohol, but, there's a lot of grass smoking, there's some dabbling with mushrooms, that sort of thing. So, people are in a pretty good mood, and we're having all these interesting conversations and meeting all sorts of cool, interesting, diverse people. Case in point, there was a couple of guys there I met that known each other for damn near 50 years. They met out in the desert in the Sudan or Saudi Arabia, maybe. They were in the oil business. They're both engineers. And one of those guys, and they both went off into life and got married, had children and everything. And one of them now is a trans person, right? And that was funny because he's a super sweet dude. You could see it in him. Like, there's no denying the fact that there's like that side to him. And I asked him about it straight up because, I'm that kind of guy. And also it was funny to me because and I'm not talking down about him or anything. I truly, as a human being, I think I love the guy. He was just such a nice person. But it's funny to see because there's, outwardly, there's nothing feminine about him really, right? He just looks like a dude wearing a wig and makeup and painted toenails, and we're out in the desert dirty, So I was curious about it, and talking to him was awesome because he was very cool about it. As a matter of fact, he told the story of how he's a swimmer and he goes to the gym, and he's always had this in him, and he knows all these dudes. And when he came out and started, dressing like a lady, all his friends were cool with it. Nobody gave him any grief. And at the same time, because he's older, he's much older than me. He's got to be like in his late 60s. His reasoning for it was like, look, how much time do I have left on the planet? This is how I feel. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm doing it. But he doesn't expect anybody to just accept it or call him her or whatever. He's not caught up in that. Which is the big difference between kind of like a common sense way of thinking about other people around you and what's happening right now with this young woke narcissism thing that was, I think, born out of, the everybody gets a trophy generation, right? And so there was quite a bit of that at this event. And I'm talking people that are like, early 30s and younger, okay? So, because what I ran into, like for instance, there was a couple couples there, two married couples, and very nice people. I got along with them pretty well, but they didn't realize that their behavior was kind of annoying. Other people at the camp talked about them. They had a dog, and they let the dog in the cold pool, and there's clearly a sign that says no dogs, and that kind of thing. And that's a little annoying when it's a shared thing, and everybody should participate or uphold the rules. But then there was these other two dudes that showed up one night in the pool, and we know they're gay because they proudly announced it. It's late at night, and let me just preface by saying I don't care. None of that bothers me. The first day I was there, I got in the pool during the daytime, and there was clearly a few of the dudes in the pool were, they're gay. No big deal. Happy boys, I like to call them. I kind of come up with that term, which was not my own invention. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I first moved to actually West Hollywood. I had no idea that West Hollywood was where all these gay people lived. I didn't know that was a thing. I was so ignorant to it. It was really funny. But within weeks of living here, and I've been here over 30 years now, I had to come up with my own mantra, which is treat everyone as gay until proven straight. And come on, man. Come on. And what that does is that it keeps me a little bit more cautious about, because I will just blurt things out, and I'm not, with no intention at all of hurting anybody's feelings, but just because I understand they're kind of sensitive to that. At the same time, it's gone too far. This whole thing in my mind has gone too far with this woke nonsense, and we all have to walk around on eggshells now, hoping we don't offend somebody, right? It's nonsense. It's nonsense. So it's late at night, several nights into it now. I got a pretty good rapport going with most of the people. A lot of the people that I met and that were there have been going there for decades, some of them 50 years. It's a lot of fun. A lot of the discussion is about the rigs that we all have and getting there and all that sort of thing. And we're having a nice time. I don't even know, there's probably 6 or 8 people in this large pool, and bunch of little separate conversations. There's a lot of laughing and aha and oh yeah and all this going on. And these two dudes prance over, because that's what they do. They prance, And they pull up, and right away the guy wants to put his music on. And a bunch of us are like, no, dude. Did you notice there's no music on right now? There's a reason for that. But he does it anyhow, because he doesn't care. Because he only cares about himself. Because he thinks what he thinks is the way it is, and everybody else needs to think the way he does. Which is where we're at right now, which again is BS. Alright? Okay. Now he's sitting on the rim, and we're all naked, And within moments of being at that pool, something was said, and he was just looking for this opportunity to interject, I'm a proud gay male. And, as if we didn't pick up on that already. Yeah, that wasn't a secret, dude. We all saw it coming. And apparently, this is my first time meeting this one cat in particular, but he was known already because he was spreading this story that he was reliving that happened from the trail, which I'll get into in a moment. So I want to keep this kind of in order. But then, moments later, and this is all within 5 minutes of this dude showing up, he says, I got a question for the pool. He's proposing this scenario that we all now must engage in. He's running the show. He wants to run the show. It's like the devil, man. Who does that? Especially with what it was. He brings up this scenario of the Matrix and how this whole thing could just be a computer-generated thing and nothing's really real. And I'm listening to this, and people are kind of bummed out about this, that he's done this. He's interrupted everybody else's good time with his nonsense. And somebody started to get into it. I said, no, wait a second. And I addressed him directly to his face, like, hey, dude, there's no answer to what you want to do here. You're just interjecting your nonsense on us, like as if we all have to participate in this now. But secondly, the only result of us engaging with you in this nonsensical discussion, which is, I already know is going to waste all of our times and bum us all out, it's only going to manifest anxiety and fear and loathing. It's a bummer, man. The dude is a walking bummer. It's a fucking walking bummer. So I shut that down. But this guy just can't help it. He's just this young narcissist dude. Later, he's telling this story of how he was coming down the trail and he stumbled upon, I think it was somebody in a Sprinter van who was trying to fix his tire. And he's trying to make the guy who broke down sound like a jerk because he didn't pull up further, which he could have done apparently, so other people could pass him. Now, instead of helping the guy, he's just calling him out as a jerk. And I point out, and some other people point out, dude, you could have helped the guy out. He's like, well, he didn't want to help, blah, blah, blah. But he did say that the guy had a spare on the rear. Now, if I was in that situation, if anybody else was in that situation who wasn't overcome by frustration and anger, like this dude clearly wants to jump the frustration and anger in every aspect of his life, very clear from talking to him for a few minutes. This new gay woke thing is crazy to me because they don't see their narcissism and hypocrisy. They just don't see it. But I said, well, if you saw the spare, you could have just said, hey man, let's put your spare on. You could fix that tire at the camp. Boom, solution, it's over. But no, he's reliving it. And as he's reliving it, he's reliving his emotions. Everything in this dude's life is about how he feels. And you're supposed to care about how he feels about everything, which is BS. You don't have to. I don't have to participate in your make-believe world that you've invented in your head and the rules you're living by. Stop trying to force me to do that. That's what is annoying the rest of us, is that behavior. And now I'm a therapist, and I'm telling them, like, dude, I could tell you've already told this story. And I knew this because I had heard from other people that he was telling his story everywhere he goes. And I pointed out to him how he's reliving that emotion of anger. He's keeping himself consciously in a constant state of aggravation and anger. And I asked him, how old are you? 32 years old. Dude, you're 32 years old. You don't know what I hope you remember what I'm telling you, because in 20 years you're going to be a different cat, man. And I'm making other people in the pool laugh at this point now. And then later in the evening, after he's actually forced everybody else out of the pool. This dude is such a bummer that everybody else has left. And now it's me, my totally drunk friend, and these two gay guys. And I say this because it's important, because they're coming at everything from this new way of, I don't even know what's going on. It's so silly. When I was coming up, I knew a bunch of gay people. Nobody cared, right? We didn't have to talk about it. We didn't have to discuss our sexuality openly with a bunch of strangers. I don't understand that self-important, narcissistic, ego-driven nonsense. Where I come from, in Jersey, I mean, you put out there like what your issues are or whatever, your friends are going to needle you over and over and over and over and over again until you toughen the hell up and stop bringing it up, because we realize nobody wants to hear it. That's just how it is, you know. So anyhow, it gets to this point where this education comes up, and my one pal, he's homeschooling. These two couples are in the pool, and they don't have kids yet, but they're thinking about it. And when they want to have kids, they're considering homeschooling. And then these two dudes just go into this diatribe of BS, you know. And they're like, basically their status. They're supporting the status quo of what's going on now in education, which, as you know, if you're paying attention to this, if you have kids, it's all about these administrators now in the school systems, which are, they promote the statist view at any given point. So whatever the current nonsense is, they're implementing it at the federal level in the school systems throughout the country, and that all comes from the Department of Education. So I'm listening to these guys, and I couldn't take it anymore, and I'm making this story short because there was actually a few other things that had happened where these guys had just outed themselves as jerks. I'm sure that they're nice people when you have to keep in mind, like I said, everybody's on some substance or another, so maybe they were being overly. Most substances will enhance who you truly are. So if you're a little bit of a jerk, you're even more of a jerk when you're lit. You know what I'm saying? So he starts getting into this thing about how, no, we need to, and what they're really doing is they're promoting all of the woke nonsense and the sexualization of children and all these things, which I didn't want to get too deep into with them because I know what their position is already, and it comes up later. I'm going to get to this in a moment because I know what their game is. Their game is they're going to frustrate you to the point where you're going to say something that they can then spin on you and call you a homophobe or something so that it appears as if they've won the argument, when in reality they've not supported their position with facts at all, right? Which is what I ended up pointing out in a kind of a funny way towards the end here, because he's saying nonsense and now I'm just shutting him down. I'm like, dude, Department of Education didn't exist until just before 1980, right? That was a Carter thing. And when they sold this to the public, it was under the guise of, here's where we stand now in testing scores and the world with math and reading and everything else. If we do this, it's going to be better. When the reality now, all these years later, 40 years later, whatever it is, by every metric, the Department of Education has failed. What it has done is give federal jobs, state jobs, paid for by your tax dollars, to insane people to promote nonsense to children. That's where we're at now. Where the kids are dumber today than they ever were. Nobody wants to admit that. But I pointed that shit out. And then I said, well, do you have kids? And then right away they start getting defensive because they know they're gay. They're not going to have kids, right? Are you going to have kids? Oh, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Because people like you are pushing nonsense when the reality is you're never going to have to deal with it. You're never going to have to deal with your child being told a bunch of nonsense. You hate straight people. That's where we're at now because you believe all this other nonsense. It's just crazy nonsense. And I'm completely naked. And at this point, I'm so frustrated. I stand up, I point out all this to them. And I point out that, you can't defend your position because everything coming from you two people is your feelings, how you feel about things. Well, I don't feel the same way you do about any of it. So are you more right than me? Is that where we're at? I want to keep in mind, I was never angry at any of this, but they just pushed me and everybody else. They literally pushed everybody out. There's just 4 of us left here. And I get up completely naked and I'm like, you can't defend your position. And then one guy's like, well, what programs do you want to see fail or be shut down? Because they want me to say something about them being gay. And I point out to them, I'm not playing that game with you. I'm not going to say something so that you can label me a homophobe and then claim that you've won this discussion, this argument, whatever we're doing here. Not playing that game. And that was the end of it. And the funny thing was the next day, I didn't know how that went. And I felt a little guilty in a way because, I kind of became the sheriff in a way on behalf of everyone else in the pool. And I wasn't sure if that was really the right thing to do. But the next day, everybody I ran into who had been there was patting me on the back and telling me, dude, we were so on your side. The older people left like they don't care, but afterwards they laughed about it with me. And they're like, you were funny and blah, blah, blah. And then the younger people that were about the same age as these two guys, who stuck around longer, were the ones telling me we were totally on your side. We agree with what you were saying, but those guys, because I hate to put it like this, and I'm generalizing, I realize this, and I'm not right about everything, but it was funny because they're that same generation. So they don't have that, which they basically admitted to me, is the wives I was talking to more so about it the next night in another pool where we were all having a good time. They didn't have the wherewithal or the motivation to support their positions either. And I think this is a result of where our education system has gotten us to where now they're because they haven't been teaching young people how to think. They've been telling them what to think for decades now. We have people in their 30s that are not stupid people, but they didn't grow up having to defend their position with something because everything was okay. And that's the problem with that way of thinking, in my opinion. So I guess the moral of the story is, if you're going to go out in the middle of nowhere in Hot Springs and have a good time, and be around a bunch of strangers, be cool, man. Be cool. And at least be able to support what you're going to say. But I would say, don't be a narcissistic jerk trying to rule over a bunch of strangers you don't even know. It's not going to go well for you. You're not going to make yourself look like somebody special. You're just revealing yourself as a jerk. Don't be a jerk. Have a great day. Thanks for being here. Come back next time. I didn't put this video out there to ruffle any feathers. I'm not a homophobe. Or anything close to a racist. If you saw the women I've gone out with, then you would know that. So, anyhow, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Once again, I signed off too soon. There was another aspect of this issue with these guys when it came to the music. I have to tell this because it's Dolly Parton. My mother was a huge fan of Dolly Parton when I was a kid. I grew up listening to Dolly Parton. Who does? If you don't love Dolly Parton, you're not American. You know what I'm saying? She's an icon, and she's such a pleasant person and all this. And a Dolly Parton song comes on, and this dude is saying how she's theirs. I'm like, dude, I've been listening to Dolly Parton long before you were even born. I don't know what you're saying here. And again, this appropriation of things, which I don't like that term, cultural appropriation. That's what we all do as human beings. That's part of the human existence. You see something cool, you adapt it, morph it, make it cooler, adjust it to work within your own parameters and how it can help your own lifestyle. That's what it's about, people. America is a melting pot as it is, right? People are supposed to come here from all different places and help to enrich the culture overall. You're not supposed to come here and then just keep your old traditions in the place from where you ran away from. Like, why would you push bad ideas that didn't work for you over here and then come here where you want to be freer and then still push those bad ideas? It's like the people that move out of blue states to red states and then try to morph it into more of a blue state. That doesn't make sense, right? I'm not making any judgments like you should do this, you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying that way of thinking, I think it reveals you to be a little bit of a psycho. That's just my opinion. What do I know? I'm just some guy working alone out of a garage, you know. But I'm allowed to have my opinion. I'm allowed to say what I want to say and how I think. And you don't have to agree with me. And I don't want you to necessarily agree with me just because I'm putting it out there. You picking up on what I'm laying down here? Be who you are, be true to yourself, have some principles in life. You should want people to challenge you on your positions because it only makes you smarter. Either you're going to be challenged to the point where you rethink and adjust your thinking based on new ideas that come to you from somebody who's coming at you from that perspective, or the more you stand your ground and can support your positions with facts, it just reinforces your ability to do so. So I encourage you to all be thinkers and live for yourselves and have a good life and do no harm. Help each other out. And once again, I am now officially signing off. Have a great day. Thanks again for being here. Come back often and be good to one another.